Welcome to the Village Talks. This is a space where physiology meets lived experience, where we talk honestly about the body, the nervous system, relationships, and the real questions families are asking without fear-based narratives or a one-size-fits-all answer. We're your hosts. I'm Dr. Jaimy.
And I'm Dr. Brittany. We're chiropractors, perinatal specialists, and humans who work closely with families through preconception, pregnancy, birth, postpartum, and early parenthood. Whether you're preparing for pregnancy, currently pregnant, newly postpartum, raising a little one, or supporting someone who is, you're in the right place.
Let's get into today's conversation.
Hello, welcome to today's episode. We are going to be talking about birth options. What can you do? What's available to you? There's very different schools of thought when it comes to birth options, and for being in it for so long for myself and Dr. Jaimy, we really want to help our clients explore all the options that they have so they know what tools that they can utilize. So I'll start with you because you've done this before,
Yes.
twice.
Yes.
And I feel like your experiences are actually very unique. Your first was a vaginal breech delivery and your second was a head down delivery. So even just that, people don't know what their options are, but let's just start with the basics and go from there.
Yeah. I do think that part of what dictates your options is where you are.
Yeah.
Right. So your geography is going to be a factor here. So thankfully here in Denver and in Colorado, our clients do have the option of a home birth.
Mm-hmm.
We do have a handful of birth centers here in the Denver metro area. And we have a lot of hospitals supporting birth. So for most women in America, the hospital option is what's known to them and is probably what's most approachable. And I think most people just assume that's where they're going to have their baby. So it is important to relatively early on, I think earlier than most people realize, start thinking about what you want for your birth and how you envision it. A lot of people wait till the end. And, at that point, the model of care that you've chosen and the place that you're giving birth is going to feel very set.
Yep.
It is difficult to shift gears sometimes from practice to practice or from location to location once you hit third trimester. So I think what most people perceive as their options is sort of based on their own life experience.
Mm-hmm.
I think we mentioned this in a previous episode. Like if you grew up in a family where everybody gives birth at home, or in a community where a lot of people give birth at home, or you personally know a home birth midwife, that's on the table for you. That feels like a really normal thing to do. For most women in America, that's not the case. The hospital birth is probably going to be the option that is most readily and easily available to you. Mm-hmm. It's where you're probably going to see the best insurance coverage. Mm-hmm. It's where you're going to have the highest number of choices in terms of providers. Mm-hmm. So that's a conversation early on between you and a partner. Like hopefully some aspects of this conversation have come up before conception.
You would hope.
But
not always the case, but it's okay.
Yes. Well, and each stage has so many decisions to make.
So many.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's like even the decision to be like, okay, we're going to try to get pregnant on purpose. Like that's a big deal.
Yeah.
Or you have found yourself pregnant, not on purpose. Mm-hmm. But now there's all these choices. And so, it used to be you had to go see a provider to even get confirmation of pregnancy. Like that's not the case anymore. If you pee on a stick and it says you're pregnant, you're pregnant. Yep. Like our home pregnancy tests are highly accurate now. It doesn't require,
blood work.
It used to be, blood work, but even like way back in the day, I think they injected rabbits. And if the rabbit lived or died, you weren't pregnant, like way back in the day. So we've come a very long way. Yeah. You pee on a stick, it says that you're pregnant, you're pregnant. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of offices now won't see you until 11 or 12 weeks. Yeah. Because it needs to be a viable pregnancy. And I'm like, well, I mean, if it's not, you still need support. Yes. You still need guidance. So that's a whole other episode.
Yeah. But, the whole language around pregnancy and birth and postpartum.
Yeah. So, we're going to, again, that's another conversation. For today's conversation, we're pregnant.
Yep.
And we need to start thinking about where are we going to give birth?
Yeah.
And so there is so much focus on all the different stages of pregnancy. But this requires some forward planning, and it doesn't have to happen by 12 weeks.
Yeah.
You can go and have that initial visit with anybody. Maybe you probably already have an OB-GYN. You have somebody who you've had a pelvic exam or a pap smear or some level of care. And so that's a really easy person to start with.
Yeah.
Start asking questions. You kind of want to figure out really quickly with each provider that you see whether or not they're a good candidate for the person you've hired to, attend your birth.
Yep.
Do you want them to attend? Do you want them to manage?
Yep.
Right. So I think there's a lot of questions that go into it. Tour places. You don't have to be pregnant.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it might feel a little bit weird when you're trying to conceive, but you have time, and physically you probably have energy that you may not have in first trimester.
Yeah.
So, we are now far enough post-COVID that most places are offering. They absolutely have online tours. Yeah. Everybody got dialed into that really well. You can go watch these. And if anything does spark an interest, go tour the places. Yeah. Right. So within a hospital system, you have a lot of choices in terms of which OB or midwifery practice you hire. Obviously, for birth centers, that's going to be totally different. But home birth is going to be the same in terms of interview people, right? Because there should be this sense of, I feel comfortable in this place. I feel comfortable with this person. You really do kind of, some people want really touchy-feely mothering birth providers, and other people are like, I just want to know that they're giving me facts. There's no yanking me around.
That I'm going to be safe, that my baby's going to be safe, and that's it.
What you want to need from a healthcare provider is very individualized.
Definitely.
And so there does need to be an innate connection with this person and an innate trust. You don't want to be second guessing everything that they're telling you. So as best you can, ask these questions early. Make sure that your questions are getting answered, as we've also talked about in I think our first episode. Setting up, requesting a longer visit, asking for even like a virtual consultation, right? Of really trying to understand what are their philosophies and perspectives around birth. Do those line up with yours? Do you know what yours are? I think for a lot of first-time parents, they really don't know. So these are conversations that ideally are happening in the first 20 weeks so that by the time you find the right provider or you feel confident in the choice that you've made, you're settling into the second half of that pregnancy. Because the further along you get, the narrower your options are going to become.
And that's what a lot of people I don't think realize either is, and especially because it happens so fast. Pregnancy is happening and going through whether you're aware of it or not. And so 12 weeks can hit really fast. You're like, oh my gosh, I haven't toured a birth center. I haven't toured a hospital. I haven't looked at any things. Like, I've just been trying to get through first trimester. And now all of a sudden I'm in second trimester. Oh my gosh. And everything just feels so intense and very overwhelming. But what I think is really important, a lot of people don't realize that why we encourage to do this sooner rather than later is because OB practices, midwife practices, they have cutoff dates. If you're a certain week in gestation, they won't take you. And so a lot of times when people realize, oh, I actually don't want to be in a hospital setting, and it's, we're 25 weeks, that might not be somewhat like a space where you're going to be taken. And so it's unfortunate, but knowing your options sooner rather than later, and then knowing the space that you feel the most comfortable in with the providers that you feel safe with too. Super important to figure out early on. And that can change like later throughout your pregnancy too, which we've had that happen in the practice where people decided, I'm doing a home birth. And
at 38 weeks.
And there are some providers who will take you, which is amazing. But more often than not, there is a cutoff date.
And I think another important distinction is it doesn't mean you don't get care up to that point. Right? Establish care with someone based on whatever information you have, right? It might be Sally at my office loved her OB and she recommended him. And so that's where I started. And that's great. But if you start realizing pretty quickly that you're not on the same page, or Sally talks about how wonderful her birth was and you're sitting there going, I don't want any of those things.
Mhm.
It might not be the best practice.
Yep.
And so start with somebody, right?
Yeah.
Somebody needs to be watching your health and your baby's health. But once care is established, start asking questions and decide, is this the right place for me?
Mhm.
Is this the right provider team for me?
Mhm.
And then it's also a good time to be exploring other options while you're under someone's care.
Yeah.
Records can be transferred.
Mhm.
We will not discuss all of the potential complications as a part of this conversation today, because for some people, they don't have choices.
Totally.
We have patients who are giving birth at Children's Hospital because of medical requirements of their baby.
Definitely. Yeah.
Suddenly, birth choices are very limited.
Yeah. Or if mom gets put on bed rest and
yes.
things like that. There's so many
factors that go in. So this conversation really is around parents who are experiencing a very low risk, healthy birth, and there aren't any outside factors coming in that are going to take the choices away from you inherently. And so if everything's on the table, then look at the different options. Best case is talk to people who've had different types of birth. Like, does home birth appeal to you? You need to talk to people who've had a home birth.
Yep.
And anybody who hasn't had a home birth or didn't at least try for a home birth isn't a good person to talk to about home birth.
Definitely.
Right.
Yeah.
And birth center births, it's kind of the same thing. A birth center birth is very different than a home birth. And it's very different than a hospital birth because it's a little bit of both, right? Like, you're not at home, you're going somewhere, but you're not in a hospital setting, right? And so for some people, they have fears of hospitals. They've have had negative experiences there, whether it's their own medical event or loss of a family member. So for a lot of people, just the thought of going to a hospital instills a little bit of fear in them.
White coat syndrome.
Yes.
Yeah, it's real.
Absolutely. And we don't want to bring fear into birth if we don't have to.
Yep.
And so, these are just these factors. So, birth center can be this sort of nice in between where all the birth centers have normal beds in the rooms. They don't have hospital beds.
Yeah.
You are probably going to have the option. You're probably going to have your own bathroom. You're probably going to have your own shower.
Yeah. You'll have a birthing tub.
Yeah.
They're so nice. They have jets.
Water birth is an option.
Yeah.
They have birthing stools. They have
slings,
right? Like, they have all the wonderful accoutrement of birth all in this room for you.
Yep.
That you still have to drive.
Yep.
It's not your bed. But you do get to bring a lot of things with you, and you have a lot more control. They are smaller. You have a smaller team of people. You are more likely to have met every single person on this team,
Definitely.
both midwives and nursing staff. So this can feel like home away from home.
Yeah.
But they also have all the gear and all the equipment and everything that they could need in the event that you or baby needs some assistance. This is typically going to be a much quicker transfer in the event that you do need to go to the hospital.
Yeah.
So I think there's sort of what feels like this added level of safety for a lot of people.
Yeah.
By being at this close proximity to a hospital setting in the event that we do need some intervention or we do need some additional support. I think there's a misconception for a lot of people that there's absolutely no pain control options in a birth center setting. Epidural is not an option in any of the birth centers here in Colorado, but you do have the option of nitrous, and there are some other ways to try to manage your pain. That may or may not be available to you at home.
Yeah.
So again, it's sort of this kind of this little bit of a happy medium here.
Totally.
I think when it comes to hospital settings, people assume you have to be induced or you have to have an epidural. You have to have, not necessarily. It's very readily available there, and it certainly is getting utilized in a hospital a lot more often.
Yeah.
But we've had plenty of patients who are having, pretty low-key, no intervention, no medication births in a hospital.
Yep.
So many things are possible in many places.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that's available to you or not available to you in one hospital is not available to you
And a different one.
in a different hospital.
And that's where I think, too, what people don't realize is just like the birthing classes are different in every hospital, the supplies that they have are also different. Some places in a hospital, you actually can have a water birth. Other places do have a tub, but you can't have a water birth. Other places don't have a tub and you can't get in the water, but you can utilize the shower, right? So there's lots of different, when it comes to birth options, explore everything that's available to you in that setting. Some have a birth stool, some don't. I've gone to a hospital, I'm like, you don't have a birthing stool? What? This is a very basic tool that we can utilize. But things like that are also part of the umbrella of, okay, what does a hospital birth look like? What does a birth center birth look like? And what does a home birth look like? And what's available to you in every scenario?
Yeah. And I think I have given birth in a hospital. I have given birth in a birth center. I stopped after 2 babies, so I did not have a home birth. My husband and I weren't 100% on the same page with what we were comfortable with in my first pregnancy. And I think we see this a lot with patients as well, where one is leaning or comes from a place where they perhaps inherently have a higher level of trust or a higher level of fear over one thing versus another thing. And so that's going to color their feelings about giving birth in one place over another. I, knowing what I know and doing what I do, felt really comfortable and confident with a home birth. And that was terrifying to my husband. He'd never seen a birth, he was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. So the birth center was kind of our happy medium. And thankfully we did have a freestanding birth center here. And once he realized like, oh, they do have equipment here to resuscitate a baby. And it is only a block away from a hospital. Like that added layer of security meant he was like, yeah, I feel comfortable with this. And I was like, yeah, it's our first, like, this is a great place to start. And so she was Breech in the state of Colorado. You can't have a Breech baby in a birth center, not on purpose anyway. So I risked out at 38 weeks and moved. Thankfully, we had a Breech provider, a skilled Breech provider here in Denver. And so I did have a vaginal or pelvic breech birth with my first. And we've alluded to this too, like that birth, I don't know that there's nothing about that birth is what I had planned and what I had wanted. I can't say nothing was how I pictured it, but very little
just different
about how that unfolded is how I had hoped or planned for.
This is where we pivot. Pivot is the name of the game in birth.
But in retrospect, even in the immediate days afterwards, I've always felt very positive about it. And a lot of that comes down to open and honest conversations, providers saying, yes, this is possible, and no, this is not. And here's why this is not possible.
Instead of just a blanket no.
Not a dismissal, not a, we don't do that, not a, but this is going to be different than a typical head down, low risk birth. And so there are some other factors at play. And I was like, all right, well, it's not what I wanted, but thank you for explaining it. And this is a safety issue. And
definitely.
I think with my second, there weren't really conversations about what the next birth would look like. I had my assumptions and he had his. And so then when we were pregnant with our second, I was like, yeah, so we'll do this one at home. And he was like, what? Wait, what? He was like, his was like, well, the last one didn't happen in a birth center and didn't go the way that we planned. So like, he was like, okay, we'll try the birth center again. And I was like, well, the last one went fine, so we'll be at home. And he was like, well, I mean, it went fine, but like, that wasn't how we pictured it. And I had a home birth midwife here in Colorado that I knew and loved. And she was going to be out of the country at the time that I was due. And so at this point I was working at a birth center, the birth center where I planned to have my first. And I was like, yeah, we'll just, and I did meet with other home birth midwives, and the ones that I met with were ones that I knew people who'd given birth at home with them or had patients, and they loved them. And there was just, it just didn't click, right?
It wasn't there for you.
I didn't have, there was nothing negative about them. They had come to me, highly recommended by people that I trusted, but there was just something missing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like, I just kept searching until finally I think my husband was like, why not the birth center?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, because driving to the hospital with my first was like one of the worst parts of my labor. I'm like, I just don't want to get in the car.
The car's the worst.
I'm like, it's not even about giving birth at home. Like, I don't want to get in a car when I'm in labor.
Yeah.
So we planned differently for that one. And the ride was a breeze. Laid down the seats in the back, made a little nest.
There you go.
It was totally fine.
Nice.
So I think, even what you think about one birth won't be what you think about the next birth.
Oh, they're all so different.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think it's challenging, it's between you and your partner. And that can be really hard because other people in your family have their own thoughts and their own feelings, and they're concerned about you.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that a lot of the opinions that families express that are often not supportive usually come from a place of love and concern and their own fears.
It really comes from their own projections of what they think and their views and mindset about it.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that there's a lot that goes into you and your relationships with your parents and your in-laws and other people that are coming into this conversation. Mm-hmm. And some people are people pleasers. They'll put others' needs before themselves. Yeah. And I just really encourage people to figure out the balance between what you want and what your partner wants. Absolutely. And what you feel comfortable with, because you have to feel safe and secure for this process to unfold. Yeah. And so it doesn't mean we don't listen to what anybody else has to say. Totally. It's definitely not a good time to not be on the same page with your partner. Mm-hmm. So keep having the conversation as many times as it takes for both of you to be on the same page about with who and where are we giving birth, because you both have to feel safe and secure. Mm-hmm. If they're in fear of your safety, your baby's safety, this I think is a difficult concept a lot for the pregnant person to understand. You're concerned about your baby. Mm-hmm. That's your top priority. Mm-hmm. Partners are afraid for both of you. Yep. Right? It's not that we don't care about our own lives, but man, do we put that on the back burner in order to put baby first. Yeah. And so I think partners often feel like they have more at stake here than we do. Absolutely.
Well, and it's a big topic because you hear a lot from one side where yes, we want to give the power back to women and who are birthing and all of that. Absolutely. The partner is also just as important and just as involved. I've seen conversations where it's like, well, my husband won't let me have birth at home. And people are like, screw him. It's not their birth. I'm like, it is. Yes. They are a part of it and you want them to be a part of it. Otherwise you wouldn't have created this human together. Yes. So it has to be a big conversation where yes, you both feel supported. And if you are really dead set on a home birth, you need to talk with your partner about why, because there is the misconception that midwives are just these like woo-woo witches that don't know what they're doing. They don't have any medical tools or anything to resuscitate baby. They don't carry Pitocin if needed for hemorrhage and all this stuff like that. Like they do. Yep. They have all of these things. I have seen the gear and the bags that they bring in home births, and it is incredible. Tubs of tools and things that they have at their disposal, and they are trained medically. They know this stuff really well. They're not just these like random old ladies in the village.
Not anymore anyway.
Not anymore, yeah. And they used to be, and that's not a bad thing, right? Yeah. But they do have the training to assess and make sure that everything is safe for you and for your baby. Yes. It's not just this like, we'll see what happens. Yeah. And they will transfer if needed, right? And that can be traumatic in its way. But if you prepare for it and you understand that that is a factor that can happen when it comes to something like a home birth, then it does mitigate, for the most part, those fears that a lot of people have around home birth. Yes. But the partner is just as important in that conversation because you want them there. They're your support system. They're who you've chosen to have the rest of your life with and also to have a family with. And so they also need to be on board. You both need to be on board together. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's my controversial topic about it.
Well, I mean, it's not a this or that. It's a this and that. Yeah. Like absolutely the person who is pregnant and giving birth, their wants and needs and desires have to come first.
Mm-hmm.
But ideally, in order for this to unfold where you feel safe and you can your nervous system can be at rest, and where your body is most likely to be able to go through this process smoothly,
Mm-hmm.
is where you feel supported and seen where you are and by all the people that you've chosen to allow in that room with you. And so, yes, at no point do you want to be raising tensions or having arguments with these people. But like you said, if having a home birth is just absolutely what you want and foundationally important to you and feels like the only place where you're going to feel safe, then no matter how many conversations it takes, you need to get your partner there too. Right. And so we can't ignore your desire, but it also isn't okay to be like, well, screw him, who cares what he wants, or she, or whoever this person is. Like, no, and hopefully you have chosen a partner who recognizes that this is really important to you, and they're going to listen to why it's important to you, and they're going to do the research and absorb the information that you share with them in an open way, and try to be open to this, even if it's not what feels intuitive to them.
Absolutely.
Because I have seen too many people who, well, this is really important to my partner. I'm like, that's great. Can we come to a place where all of your wishes and desires are respected, where everybody's fears are addressed, not dismissed? So that you're both happy with where you're giving birth, right? Like in retrospect, I didn't really feel like I gave up home birth with my first. Like, it was in the back of my head of like, well, of course I will, because I trust this process, and this is what crunchy people do, and I feel like a crunchy person. So, but when it came down to it, I was like, thank goodness we have a birth center, because I felt totally comfortable with that. And loved the staff there, and instantly felt really connected to all of them. So I didn't feel like I was giving something up, and he came to a place where he didn't have any lingering fears or worries about not being in a hospital, right? But that was a relatively long process for us that we started before we got pregnant.
Well, and I also think too, when it comes to, if we feel really strongly that the safest option for us is a home birth, you also have to explore your fears about hospital settings. A lot of people don't talk about that. This goes into options, because it's always a possibility that you might have to transfer, whether at home or whether at a birth center. So you still have to address those fears around it. And you don't have to necessarily give them up, but it can be very traumatic, even if it's the smoothest process and they want to just transfer baby to make sure that baby gets better oxygen, especially here in Colorado. We're at elevation. That's another topic. But even if we need to transfer to make sure baby's okay and everything turns out fine, that transfer process and the fact that we had to transfer can be very traumatic. Very stressful. So you also have to look at all of your fears around it. And we have to be really honest and really vulnerable with ourselves in that. Because if we don't, and if we're not, then that's where I see the more disappointment, or we're unhappy with certain things that happened in our labor and how the outcomes were and things like that. Because that's also an important conversation of understanding what your options are, right? Because the options for the most part are hospital, birth center, home birth. And then what are all the details that go into every single one of those things? And it's very overwhelming, which is why we say, start before you're pregnant.
Early.
With all of this stuff, because it can be really overwhelming and there's a lot of information out there. But the difference, right, between like a hospital setting is they try to teach you as best you can to come in, wait at home as long as you can, birth at home as long as you can. Birth center's the same thing. But most birth centers won't take you if you're not at 6 centimeters. Right? They'll send you home.
They'll check you and send you home.
Hospitals, majority of the time, will keep you if you have consistent contractions. And home birth, you just get to stay home and talk to your midwife. So it's a very different setting with that type of stuff.
And what do you want that part of your labor to look like?
Exactly.
I think going back to, talking about like the training and the skill set of home birth midwives, I do think there is not enough general information to the public about the training that they go through and the skill set that they
Absolutely.
have. They are, I think, the absolute experts in a hands-off observatory birth,
More of a
right?
physiologic birth.
Yes,
Yeah.
like they are birth keepers, right? Like they are ensuring that you and your baby are safe, but they don't exist in a place where they're in charge of your birth. So, in order for you to even qualify for a home birth, you have to be really low risk, right?
Yeah.
You and baby, all your labs have to be normal. Baby's got to be in a good position. Like really you're keyed up for what should be a really smooth, uncomplicated birth.
Yeah.
So we have people who are really committed to home birth, and then something pops up on a 20-week anatomy scan and suddenly that's not on the table anymore.
Yeah.
So that's a really big shift. And this is where like not considering a hospital as a possibility or not thinking about where you would want to go in a transfer, this you have to think about that too, even if you're planning to be at home.
Yeah.
Then we have people who are planning for a hospital birth and are like, I have a low pain tolerance. I'm going to get the epidural super early. I don't want to deal with it. I'm like, there's a high likelihood you're going to experience some level of pain during your labor, right? Based on, you're not going to the hospital with the first contraction. They're not giving you an epidural 1 centimeter,
I know.
So you kind of need to understand what's possible within the vision that you have in your head.
Absolutely.
And also be open to the alternatives and what that might look like. Because again, we can think that we've thought of all the things. We can try to have a plan or goals or a dream or whatever we want to call it. But I think flexibility is the name of the game. Try to
Always
set
gotta
yourself
pivot.
up for things go, if you do have this dream, you want to do all the research and try to set yourself up, remove the obstacles to all the things that may stand between you and that vision.
Yeah.
But it also means considering all the things that can happen between now and your birth.
Yep.
And that's where this research comes in.
Yeah.
Start researching, start visiting, ask around,
Yep.
right? If you have people who've talked about how terrible their births were, people do, that's part of their own journey is sharing that process. And so why was it terrible? Was it the place where they gave birth? Have you heard 3 different people talk about how they really didn't have a great experience at this location? Then maybe that's not a location you want to research. Or was it one provider or multiple different providers? Maybe you're not asking, right?
Yeah.
But if you have had people say, oh, I loved my OB, I loved the birth center where I gave birth, like then ask more questions about what did they love about it and why did they love about it? Because as they're sharing, that may not resonate with you.
Totally. It all goes into values.
Yeah.
What are the people you're talking with about their birth stories and their experiences? What did they value the most going into that experience? Because that's what's going to dictate. If you don't have the same values, you might have a different experience. You might have a good experience. You might have a not great experience, but it really goes into the value system of what they were looking for and wanting when they entered into that space.
Yep, absolutely. And were those values respected?
Yep.
Right. And, did they, they went into it wanting one thing. Is that what happened? They went into it wanting one thing, got something different, still feel really good about it. So yeah, I mean, we've said this before too, like always be curious. Ask the people that you know. If you don't have anyone in your circle that has recently given birth or has given birth where you live, right? Like obviously we're in Denver, but it does start with asking around and hopefully getting people who were happy with their location, happy with their provider, happy with how their birth went. That's where you start. Yep. Right. Because regardless of what people wanted, if they didn't leave feeling like they had a positive birth experience, I don't know that there's a provider who only has 100% 5-star reviews, right? Like you can never make all the people happy all the time. Yep. And so usually there's a disconnect there. And you don't want to experience that disconnect. You are trying to connect with this place and with this person so that you feel safe and that you feel supported. And this process can unfold in as hopefully as closely to the vision that you have as possible. So explore, visit your spaces, understand what isn't possible where you are in each of these different locations, and how does that align with your values, your partner's values. You know, going back to partners, if there really is a lot of disconnect, this is a good time to get a professional involved.
Therapy is great.
Because if we're not on the same page for birth, maybe we're not going to be on the same page for parenting. And it doesn't mean that you picked the wrong partner. It means that your lived experiences are very different. And what you feel strongly about, there's a reason behind it. And so having these open conversations, you know, you, as I said, you chose this person for a reason. And so you have to have some things in common. You have to have some similar values. But birth and parenting is totally nuanced and different probably than anything you've done before, unless you've come into this relationship with kids from a previous relationship. So if this stuff starts coming up in pregnancy, ideally don't wait and assume that it'll resolve or you'll get on the same page. Like talk to somebody, do some counseling, do some therapy. If you're not able to have these open, honest conversations together and try to work through some of these disagreements or these issues where you're not on the same page, because if you can get there before birth, then now you have the tools to continue to have these conversations through early parenthood. And that's going to be really, really necessary, is having the communication skills, because there will be difficult conversations. Because with each stage of parenthood, you're going to have different ideas, right? Like I'm parenting 2 teenagers now. And, you know, my husband and I did grow up with parents who had differing philosophies and differing strategies around parenting. And so that's kind of always the base of our conversation. Well, here's what I had, or here's what I had. And do we like it? Do we dislike it? And, you know, also like we had different experiences because we are different genders. So, and as our, you know, our children. And so there's some ways where we can identify more with one kid than the other. Like, the point is this continues. And so if you can
just stop there.
So if you can have conversations about this instead of arguments about it, it's more productive. And then you come at all these things as a team, instead of feeling like this is really hard for me and I'm already struggling. And now I also have conflict with my partner. It just makes everything even harder. So and then, you know, for family, that you got to kind of figure out. Because at the end of the day, you may find yourself needing to make choices that are in direct conflict with the choices they would make for you or the opinions they have on the topic. And it's really hard to enter the birth space and process your birth afterwards when you put somebody else's needs before your own. You're left with often a lot of feelings and emotions or resentment towards people because you made that choice, because you felt pressured by them. And really what we want is for everybody to feel good about how things went, right? It's this positive birth outcome that goes beyond you and your baby are healthy. That is always the most important thing. But you don't get to pick your emotions. And the emotions that you feel after the fact often can be closely tied to decisions that were made or things that happened where you weren't honoring your own choices and your own values, or you felt that they weren't honored by other people that were a part of this process.
Absolutely. And that's such a huge conversation as well when it comes to family. And it's not that they're like, some are not so great, and it is what it is. And even if you are very like, this is what I want to do, I understand that you are upset about it. I understand that you're concerned about it, but you have to set boundaries sometimes when it comes to those. And you have to be okay with those boundaries. You have to have, I don't want to say coping strategies, but ways that your nervous system can still feel regulated, even when your family strongly disagrees with your decision. And that could be, you know, you came from a family who only did home birth and you're going to have a hospital birth.
Yeah.
It's the exact same when it comes to those different philosophies. So really figuring that out before you get there, I know we say it all the time, is going to help you kind of walk in that confidence and that empowerment a little bit more.
Yep.
And also, again, like when it comes to the different scenarios, postpartum care too is also an important factor, the aftercare of birth and how each one of those places does it too. Like a hospital keeps you for 24 to 48 hours, sometimes longer. Birth center is about 4 hours, and then you get sent home, and then at home you get to stay home.
Yeah.
So those are all different factors that go into your decision making too.
Yeah. And I think that's a nice segue to one of our next topics of postpartum.
Totally.
So because I do think it's important in that conversation again to kind of talk about family, talk about boundaries.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah,
awesome.
I think that might be a good stopping point for this conversation.
Yeah.
But as we've said before, if through this conversation there are any questions or topics that pop up for you, feel free to drop them in the comments. In terms of places of birth, we really can only speak specifically to the Denver metro area because this is where our experience lies. But if there are kind of generic questions or you need some help researching what's possible for you where you are, we have friends and colleagues all over. We're happy to connect you with somebody that is maybe a little bit more local to you. Yeah.
And I've attended births in every scenario too, hospital, home birth, birth center, and they're all very different. So it's nice to have that well-rounded experience, knowledge, right?
Yeah. Kind of have somebody help you sort of navigate at least the early landscape of what this looks like.
Yep.
So
absolutely. All right. Thanks, guys. Until next time. If you found today's episode helpful, you can subscribe, share it with a friend, or leave a review. It helps this podcast reach the families who need it most. You can find us at Belly Bliss in Denver and online for resources, workshops, and support. Until next time, take care of your body and trust its wisdom.